Hello and welcome to Solely Singleton Season 13, Episode 3. I am your host, as always, Brad. Here with me is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
We have a very important episode today, as you can read from the title. Those of you who have had us do this multiple times before know what's up. We're going over the new edition of the starter cube that we make periodically over and over again to give a cheap entry point into cube for people.
Yeah, it's been a little while since the last time we talked about this, so it's about the right time to bring it up again.
It's only been 5 seasons, Eric.
Which is like
a year and a half.
Yeah, I was like, because of season 12, I don't know how long that is anymore. The season that never ended.
So this is your first update to this cube in 18 months, and to call it a shakeup would be an understatement. There are sections that are basically ground up reworks. All sorts of cards had to be cut because, holy God, did they get expensive. And we got all kinds of new toys because while I get very tired as a content creator of having to talk about new sets every 5 minutes, the fact that they're coming out does mean there's a bunch of stuff that flies under the radar and we get to use it on the cheap.
Yeah, this should be pretty interesting to go over.
For those of you following along at home, you can find it at cubecobra.com/c/thestartercube. You can also find a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, we're not going to explain and read every card that we bring up. If you're interested in what it does, take a look at the cube.
If you're listening to this episode and you're not familiar with our podcast, you're probably here specifically because someone pointed you towards the cube and you're looking for a primer. So you have the cube list in front of you, most likely, if you're unfamiliar with these cards.
Yep.
So without any further ado, let's jump into this main topic, the primer for the Starter Cube 2021.
Sounds good. All right, Brad, it's been, like you said, about a year and a half since we last visited the Starter Cube, so you want to give us a quick rundown of what the Starter Cube actually is?
Well, Eric, I'm glad you asked. So, the Starter Cube, for anyone who is unaware, is a $120 budget cube. That means that on TCG Player, I should be able to add the entire cube to my cart, optimize it, and end up with $120 plus shipping because I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, nothing's perfect.
Nothing is guaranteed after the cube is made, and it's made. If by the time this episode airs in 4 days, one of these cards is spiked to $10, all bets are off. I can't help you.
Yeah, and just over time, things get more expensive. I mean, that's why we're revisiting this, because the old version of the Starter Cube is more than $120 now.
The old version of the Starter Cube had managed to creep its way up. It was sitting at like 180 or so from 120 over the course of the last 18 or so months.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a rather large update while still being a balanced entry point into cubing that you can start with this, add any cards that you own that you want to cube with to it to manipulate what it's got, and you'll have a solid starting point for your cubing journey with your friends.
Yeah, it's a good baseline to start with, and, you know, if you don't want to make any changes, it'll be a perfectly fun cube to play every once in a while. If you want to make changes based on what you have, that's cool too.
Yes, but it is important to point out, we build this as a baseline for you to make your own cube.
Right.
You can play it as it stands. It is not some wholly perfectly balanced, amazing environment. It has the requirement of it has to be $120 to buy the damn thing. I can't make it absolutely perfect.
And, I mean, there's no perfect cube for every group either.
And what's perfect for your group will vary from week to week as you want to try new things out.
Right.
So, when you pick up the Starter Cube, do not be afraid. If you pull out 20 cards at random and put in cards that you like more instead, you have not ruined the experience. This is something that we get a lot with the Starter Cube, is people who are afraid to move on from it. When, like, they're afraid by altering it, they'll have thrown off some internal balance that will destroy the cube experience. It is a very robust system. You will be fine. You can rip out cards, throw ones in you like, The experience will change. It will not be ruined. That is what happens every time anyone updates their cube, but don't be afraid to do it. You can always change it back after another draft.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, if you're making changes, don't rip up the old cards or don't immediately sell them out. Like, you can make the changes, play it a few times ago. I'm not really sold on these 10 changes that I made. I like these other 10, so let's, revert some of them. Cool. That's how cube designers work. Like,
yes, or try more new things.
yeah, so it's one of those that, like, as a base cube, this will play quite well. I'm impressed by what we managed to do with $120, but don't worry about editing and making your own changes. In fact, do make your own changes, customize it to your playgroup.
Yeah, so this change is 94 cards different than the last iteration of the cube out of 360 cards.
Nice.
We lost some nice ones, but to be honest, this feels like purely an upgrade. One of the big changes for me is we've gained a lot of what I'm going to call lower end mana fixing. They're not dual lands, but, they're more evolving wilds tier lands.
Yeah.
So our land base has managed to be more robust at this micro budget while being a lot less unbalanced, where certain guilds got far better lands than other ones originally.
Yeah.
We have a lot more options for keeping everybody basically at a good spot.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by what we managed to do with the land base, just because that's always the biggest issue with cubes that are budgeted, is lands that are good generally cost money, even if it's just $2 or $3. When you only have $120 and you gotta have 360 cards, that's tough, right? Like,
yeah, if they could go ahead and reprint the check lands in every single Magic set so they would stop becoming $5 5 minutes after you look away from them.
Right.
That'd be sweet. One of the big things that we did improve in the lands is the former version of this cube had an issue where there was only like 25 fixing lands in the cube.
Yeah.
Which you would prefer to have at least 30, 35 depending at a 360.
Yeah, about 10%.
It's a fine amount, but it was a little annoying. Now we have a nice round 30.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel as annoying to me when I'm trying to get fixing mid-draft.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, during the draft, you're not so like, oh, I see a fixing land, I have to take it now. Even if there's something else that, like, would be good, like, I have to take the fixing land. Now it's like, you should, and I would, because, that's how I play, but it's not one of those, like, you'll never see another fixing land in the next 3 packs. So it feels a lot more balanced in that aspect.
Yes. We didn't really lose any archetype completely. We lost some beloved cards, but not really archetypes.
Yeah.
I thought for sure I was going to have to get rid of the Ninja's archetype from this cube, as it's just on the edge of being too expensive for what it is, but I managed to keep it in, which I think is a big win, because it's something, I don't want to say that it's a completely novel idea at this point, but
No.
it's something spicy and original feeling compared to stock standard boring stuff.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of flavor to the cube.
Yeah. There's one big thing missing that we need to bring up. It's time to pour one out for Drake Haven.
Yeah.
It was a good run. You made it longer than you should have.
Probably.
It's time to say goodbye, my friend.
Which is disappointing. It wasn't like an all-star in the cube, but it was fun.
It was barely there, and now it's barely there and slightly too expensive.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't worth trying to keep in.
Yeah, which is disappointing because it's always one of those, like, it's really fun. It's a pet card kind of thing, so.
It's a sign of where the cube started.
Yeah.
Like, for those who know the history of the cube, we won't get into it for the 50th time, but it's a bit sad to see it go.
Yeah, but I mean, it's had a good run, as it were, so. And maybe it'll come back in the future. I mean, if it gets reprinted with some more support, it's not gone forever.
Yeah?
Not gone forever.
I'd really like to see it reprinted at Uncommon so that you could try it out in a lower power setting.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. That would be really, really cool.
Maybe with one other variation of it.
Yeah, like, because there's the black version, but that's not any good.
It's not nearly the same thing.
Yeah, so I guess the other major change is we've added a lot of stuff. I mean, in the 90 cards, there's some new things that are pretty exciting.
Yes, we actually got quite a few new toys.
Yeah,
The biggest one is without a doubt the persist combo.
I'm amazed that there's enough support for it to actually like not just be a meme in the cube of like, oh, you managed to get these 3 very specific cards. Like, there's redundancy that makes it a legitimate option in the cube.
Yes. So basically, every part of the persist combo has redundancy in some way. A couple of cards I could argue I should have put in a better card instead of the persist combo card there, but I wanted the redundancy to exist partly because it gives you more variations of sub decks to run the persist combo in,
Right.
but mostly because at a cube at this power level due to its budget, tutoring is not really a thing.
Nah.
So you can't get away with a very minimal support for something like a combo.
I mean, even like card draws, it's there, but it's not the powerful card draw.
There's some powerful card draw, but it's not the same as in a
Yeah.
fully, 10 years well-loved cube.
Yeah, you're not just churning through your deck.
When we're at a lower power setting like this, then you need some more redundancy. So everything's got at least one piece of redundancy. Some have many. They are at least solid cards that you could argue picking up, knowing that you could use it in the persist combo if you were in the colors for it.
Right.
So the persist combo basically exists everywhere except blue.
Yeah.
And the key portions to me to look out for is Goblin Bombardment has made it. Thank God for that reprint.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, even ignoring that in the creature decks, I think it's just a strong card in this cube.
It is. It absolutely is. The 2 persist creatures are Murderous Redcap and everyone's old favorite Kitchen Finks.
Yep.
Yeah, Kitchen Finks was painful to fit in here price-wise, but I did want the redundancy.
Yeah, it's like what, like $1.50 or something?
Yeah. You've got quite a few ways to get counters on creatures between Vizier, Renata, and Good Fortune Unicorn.
Yep.
So that you can persist forever as long as you have a sack outlet. We've got backup sack outlets. You've got Viscera Seer. You've got Carrion Feeder. You name it.
Yeah. There's even Nantuko Husk.
I won't lie. Nantuko Husk, I had no intention of adding in, but he's like literally 1 penny.
Yeah.
So he's like getting a free -1 card and getting my $120 budget. So he made it. If you cut Nantuko Husk, I'm not going to say a bad thing about you.
No, but at the same time, like, that's probably going to kill some people.
It'll be funny when it does.
Yeah. So, it's not a trash card, but it's definitely in there for the budget.
And I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
We had a lot of the patrons test this cube out for a week or two. And basically, by the end of it, after several revisions and people pointing out sweet new tech that's super low budget, or pointing out that something probably wasn't pulling its weight, and it turned out that it was a pretty overpriced card for what it was doing.
Right.
By the end, the only cards people really had that they disliked were very obviously there as a like, yeah, it's not the best card in the cube, but it's literally 2 cents. So it lets us make the cube.
Yeah, and it's good enough.
Exactly. It's non-embarrassing, as Anthony would say.
Yeah.
And it lets you build off of your cube. So you have a cube, you can play it. Yeah, there's that 14th, 15th pick you're not a big fan of, but that's when you gut it later.
Right.
All right, let's not get too hung up on the specific changes. Let's go into an overview of what the actual cube list looks like.
Yeah, so at the very basic, it's a 360. Managed to split up the colors evenly, which not necessary, but it's nice at 52 each. There's 3 guild cards and 2 dual lands for each guild and 10 rainbow lands. Not all of them are like exactly rainbow, but they're fixing that aren't exactly guilds.
10 more Evolving Wilds tier fixing lands.
Right. And then rounding it off, 40 colorless cards, which there's some decent colorless cards given that colorless is usually a problem at this budget.
Yes, and it's worth noting the whole 10 set of signets is in here.
Yeah.
We didn't get to do the fancy thing we did last time where we used some of the talismans, which I prefer the talismans, but there's now a like $2 price difference between each one, and it isn't worth it at this budget.
No. And I think we stretched on some of the signets as it was.
Yeah.
But so I guess we can break down some of the basic archetypes that you're going to expect in the colors. White has aggro. It's pretty ubiquitous in cubes.
And to get into it further, white has a high density of low drops, as does red, as one would expect. Black is okay at it. It is not specifically meant for it. It is better as the secondary color to one of the other two.
Yes.
Its 1-drops are not as focused on aggressive 2-power creatures, but it does have very good low drop removal spells. It's got some very good aggressive 2-drops.
It's got the hand disruption. It's a great secondary or maybe tertiary. I would suggest against that in an aggro deck for this cube, but it's a good helper to either white or red in the aggro.
White also has a very strong token theme in here.
Yeah.
This can either splash into some green, some blue, or some red, or honestly, you could literally go any of the other 4 colors as your secondary, because if you go blue, you're going to be playing tokeny, and you're probably going to be playing a more tempo-oriented style token deck.
Yeah.
If you go black, you're playing very aristocratsy.
Yep.
If you're going red, you're probably just playing like an aggressive token-heavy deck. If you're going green, you're probably going to try to go a bit more mid-range with it, get them bigger.
Yep.
You're probably going to fairly play Good Fortune Unicorn. You're going to probably be the guy who actually drafts and uses Renata outside of a combo.
Right. And in that one, you do have the option of splashing in the combo easily. So
White's got a lot of good stuff when it comes to aggro. It's got a nice token deck if you want to do something interesting when you're playing more. Honestly, you can go from aggro all the way down to control with it. It's got the staples of control we all expect.
Which, amazingly, there's a 4-drop board wipe in here. Shatter the Sky.
There's exactly one. We fit in exactly one. We did it.
Which, that's amazing. Like, 4-drop board wipes, premium.
It has been a hole in this cube for a long time. It is very hard to get a 4-drop board wipe.
Yep.
So Shatter the Sky is a pretty good one. We've got Fumigate at 5 still. So you've got your board wipes in white. Black's got other board wipes, but they're the black style languish variants and stuff.
Right. White's doing what white does in cube. It has options in everything, basically.
Yeah, when it comes to like standout new cards to like point out that are really nice to see, we were able to fit in Blade Splicer for the first time. We got Resto Angel, which was an amazing reprint that went down in price.
Yeah, that's a sweet card.
We got one of the 3 that I'm going to talk about later. We have Elspeth Sun's Nemesis, which is like the first very good white planeswalker at the like $1-ish tier.
Which does bring up, like, there are planeswalkers in this cube. This is not the only one.
Yes, every color has at least one planeswalker. Multicolor has several.
Yeah.
There is a solid number of planeswalkers for a 360 in here. It's not as many as your average unpowered cube you're used to seeing, or your powered ones, or the MTGO cubes. All those will have more planeswalkers.
It's a bit low, but it's not one of those like, oh, there's only 2.
No, you gotta be careful. Someone could just play a walker against you and start outvaluing you.
Yeah. Another neat card is Elspeth Conquers Death. It's a sweet white card.
Which is essentially another planeswalker from what I've been told to evaluate it as. I have yet to play with the card myself. I still apologize for that.
Yeah.
But that's enough white. Let's move into blue. Everyone's favorites are here. We've got a very nice spells deck that you can move into, either being a flavor of how you run your control deck.
Yeah.
Running it very strong in a blue-red variant.
Yeah.
You can go any way with that, really. Into Grixis, Jeskai, you name it.
Yeah, the spells deck is just a strong deck that usually has a few core like creatures that support it, like Murmuring Mystic, or if you're looking in red for Young Pyromancer, and then all of the counter spells and card draw that blue is known for.
Yep. And then we've got Tempo is very strongly supported with the Ninja's Accent, which is a fun fan favorite.
Yeah.
We've also got Blink if you want to go with white. You get Soul Herder, you get the white Blink cards. They just work really well with blue's value ETB creatures and Tempo decks.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's control. Blue has counter spells, card draw. It has managed to get Aetherling and Dream Eater, so there's some big 6-drops that are scary.
Aetherling is also going to come up in a discussion later.
So yeah, blue's doing blue things. The ninja sub-theme is a bit of nice flavor. There's a lot of counter spells in this list, so that's something to look out for. Most of them are not hard counters, though.
Yeah, it's a lot of soft counters and stuff. They just happen to be cheaper and easier for me to run. It helps that this is a more tempo-oriented blue section than in some other cubes, so the soft counters at very low drops tend to help out. Some of the standout new stuff in this section: Dungeon Geist, classic.
Oh yeah.
Muyan Ling is the new Planeswalker for blue. This is the first time we've had a blue Planeswalker in this cube because they're all expensive.
And I think this one fits pretty well with what blue's generally trying to do in this cube.
She works well when you have a more tempo-oriented section too, which we do.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the biggest things to me, I'm always happy when I get to do something like this. Honest to God, Counterspell is in the cube, which it's really rough when people look at the intro cubes and they don't see Lightning Bolt and Counterspell, and I have to explain to them that like Lightning Bolt's $2. The average price of a card in this cube has to be 35 cents.
Right, and the Incinerate is just fine.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt is a great card, but there are a lot of Lightning Bolt variants that are worse, but still good, that I can run for like 5 cents.
Yeah. Counterspell is basically in the same boat of like, Counterspell is good. There are other options that are close. But it's always nice when you can have these signpost, exciting, classic type cards of just actual literal Counterspell.
Yep.
So that's sweet. There's a few new cards that we haven't had much testing with, but I'm pretty excited about. That's like Hard Evidence. This is sweet. I love investigating.
Yeah. So moving on to black. Black, as always, has access to its Aristocrats deck. It's just got the general good accent as an aggro secondary. It's very good at playing the mid-range and control decks because it's got all the controlling cards it has access to and some brutal ETB creatures that give you insane value over your opponent.
Yeah, I think black is doing a great job of being a support color to any of the other decks. I think there is potentially a mono black deck because we've got Gary, but that's probably not going to come together too much. I think black's just a really good support to other colors.
Yeah, black has a problem in a cube that's this low budget.
Yeah.
Which is the deck I would point you toward in a normal cube and say the black deck would be Reanimator.
Yep.
You cannot do it at this budget. I tried every which way. You rely on such bad cards to do it. You would never want to play it.
Yeah, you end up having like 4-drop Reanimate and
5-drop Reanimate more often than you would like. It's bad.
Yeah, and there aren't particularly great targets to Reanimate either. You get a couple.
Yeah, if only one half of the equation was the problem, I might try to force it to see if it could hold up. But both halves are the problem at this price point.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
It is one of the things I'd point out if you're like, I just got this cube and I'm wondering what to upgrade first. My answer is always lands.
Yeah.
But then my second answer would be if you're like having trouble having people be bored with black or something, invest $50 in getting a sweet Reanimator deck going. Like that's probably way more than you need, honestly. Probably 20-30 would be enough to get like the 5-6 cards you need to get that deck moving.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it only needs a couple cards, but they're all several dollars. So at this price point, not really a possibility. The other thing is that most of those Reanimate cards are not going to be outclassed in the near future, most likely. They've kind of stuck around for a while, so they'll be fine as an investment into the cube.
We do have some sweet new cards, though. So black gets to be the only color that gets a monarch card. We got Feast of Succession, which is a 6-drop version of Languish. All creatures get -4/-4 for 6 mana, but you also become the monarch. So if you're playing the ultra slow, like blue-black control deck, it may be a very decent card.
Oh, yeah.
You will notice when I was in white, I didn't mention Jailer. When I was in blue, I didn't mention Fall from Favor. We did not want to run anything like that in this cube because Fall from Favor is like a penny. We had it in here for about 5 minutes before every single person who had play tested the cube went, holy shit, get rid of Fall from Favor. It's so problematic.
It's not an okay card.
If you're looking to upgrade the power of the cube, maybe look in those directions. But talk about some snap first picks.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a couple snap first picks that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think Feast of Succession is a good spot for what you are looking for as a monarch card in this cube.
We got to play Eat to Extinction, which is great.
Yeah.
Shriek Maw, your favorite, managed to be cheap enough for a change.
I mean, that's a classic one, so...
Yeah. We actually, as much as a lot of people give ZNR a bit of shit, we got Skyclave Shade and Null Priest of Oblivion in here, both of which are great pickups for black.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Eric, move us into red.
Yeah, so red, we've already talked about it. It's classic aggro color, and yeah, aggro is supported in this cube. There's a couple things like Goblin Guide are not in there, but generally, aggro cards are cheap, so your aggro section's pretty strong in this cube, and red holds up to it. There's some solid 1-drops, some good 2-drop. Red also works with the spells that we brought up in blue. It has Young Pyromancer, we've got like Burning Prophet and stuff like that, so the spellsy deck with your Arc Trails, your Abrades, Incinerates, that type of stuff, it's going to play pretty well. There's also the Aristocrats. We brought up Goblin Bombardment. That's honestly just a strong card, but it works really well in the Aristocrats deck. And Hissing Iguanar is also in the cube with some token generation here and there from Pia and Kieran, that type of stuff. So it's a nice part of the Aristocrats deck that's usually going to lean more towards the aggro style of Aristocrats, not the grindy long game, but it's still there. We've also got the classic Burning of Zunier and Wildfire, which not the strongest of cards, but I think works well in this cube.
Yes, they are perfect at this cube's power level. And I think that's one thing that, like, in my cube, we've talked about, I'm probably just axing the Wildfire deck entirely. It doesn't keep up anymore.
The only reason it's in there is because people like to draft it.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to draft the really fun 1-2 deck.
Yeah, you're not going to win too many games, but
you want to draft it.
Right.
Whereas in this cube, it's about on power level with a lot of the decks. You don't have the Raffle Stomp matches where someone, drops down a turn 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor or something. Like,
yeah.
And it wasn't you with your Wildfires because you had to pick Wildfires.
Exactly. I was like, the exact thing that you want to do in your Wildfires deck is problematic against the Wildfires deck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does fit better in this power level of cube. So it's always a fun thing when that can come together.
Yeah. Red and green make a fantastic mid-range core in this cube, by the way.
Yeah.
It's probably, like, low-key my favorite deck in this cube.
Wow.
Which is weird, because it's not normally my favorite deck. I think the thing that does it for me is the persist combo spices it up enough that when I play this core and I see the cards for that, I can just slowly grab them. And then when you get that, like, oh man, I've already got, like Bombardment, Renata, Redcap, and Finks or something.
Yeah.
Just because you were value picking cards in your colors or whatever, and you just snagged the Goblin Bombardment in the off chance. Then you see, like, Carrion Feeder, and you realize, oh, I did value pick that second pick Chupacabra I was debating running. And now you're just like, now I'm in the Jund mid-range deck, and I've got a combo at my core that I can threaten while being the fair deck.
Yeah, and To be fair, the land base does support pretty well starting as, your green-red mid-range and then branching out into a third color for Jund pretty easily. So
And green helping out with that, as we'll get to in a moment here.
yeah, I do want to bring up that red, while it's aggro focused, does have solid mid-range and a couple of decent high-end stuff as well. Like Emissary of Grudges is scary. So
I think one of my biggest pickups for the cube is in red, which is not at all the aggro card to me. It's Fiery Confluence.
oh yeah, that's a big one.
Like, yes, you can play it in an aggro deck, I guess, but that is not where I play my Fiery Confluences.
Not generally. No, that's a sweet one.
That was probably one of the proudest pickups for me in this changeover. I did not think it was going to be in the budget, and it managed to just sneak in there. But yeah, red is surprisingly diverse because of how well it's playing into the mid-range decks. The fact that you have the blue Spellsy control deck with it, and obviously red aggro. The default, what you think of when you think of red in Magic the Gathering.
Yep. Yeah, it's a pretty nice looking red section. So that means we're on to green. Speaking of things that are default when you think of colors, green has ramp. It does exist in this cube.
Yes, green has ramp and a lot of it. Unfortunately, elves is the weak point.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to 1-drop elves, we only have 6 of them, which it's an okay number, but I want more.
It's enough. Yeah.
2 drops, you only get like 2 or 3 more. You get 3 more, it looks like.
And there's the enchantment ones.
Yeah, the enchantment ones as well. So
It's a decent core to it, but they're not the best. There's no noble hierarch. So
no. So you do have to actually like very highly pick any type of ramp if you're going into the ramp deck.
right. And some of the ones that you wouldn't like highly pick that you would expect to wheel probably aren't gonna wheel just because they are the higher ones. Like Landwar Elves is fantastic. Rift Sower is probably gonna be taken reasonably high because it's still a solid pick, even though, it's not a noble hierarch.
And one thing we haven't mentioned previously that is worth pointing out is blue-green flash is here as a deck. So if you're playing mid-range, you don't want to play like, Jund or Naya mid-range.
Yeah.
You're like, I want to play like blue-green, really nice value. You go into picking up your Night Pack Ambusher, Vivian, who is sitting here as the green planeswalker. You can snack up your Spectral Sailor as a wonderful blue card. Oh my god, is that card amazing every time I've ever cast it.
Yeah, I can pick up a bunch of counter spells and just be the most annoying player ever.
Yes. It's a very fun, like, off-key way to play your green decks that is very well supported considering what we've got to work with.
Yeah, and green is just, it's got solid mid-range. We've talked about this enough. It also has the persist combo, so it's kind of exactly where you want green to be. It's got ramp, it's got top end, and it's got a bit of spice.
Yeah. Speaking of a bit of spice, some of my favorite cards that we added, Paradox Zone, which I will read to you. We will read Paradox Zone. This is a new card for everyone wondering. Paradox Zone is 4 and a green for an enchantment. Paradox Zone enters the battlefield with a growth counter on it. At the beginning of your end step, double the number of growth counters on it. Then create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of growth tokens on Paradox Zone. So, you bring it in as a 5-drop. At end of turn, you make a 2/2.
Sweet.
Next turn, you make a 4/4.
Okay.
The turn after that, you make an 8/8.
Yeah,
The turn after that, someone lost the game.
probably. Yeah, that's it's not a fast kill because you're starting at a 5-drop, but once it gets down, it's going to get out of hand quickly if they don't deal with it.
Yes, it is a very, very good, fair card that will put a clock on your opponent immediately.
Yeah, that's sweet.
We also got other really fun cards. Sweet Gum Recluse for the people who just want to cascade with Flash. I just want to do that.
And love spiders.
Less so, but Flash and Cascade can get there.
Yeah.
Timeless Witness as a cube that doesn't get to run E-Wit. Timeless Witness is a pretty sweet pickup.
That's a neat one. There is some like graveyard value going on from green. It's the timeless witness type things.
Yes, green's graveyard play in this is more for playing a fair green-black mid-range deck,
Right.
making use of the yard.
Yeah, where you're just like, okay, I'm getting value out of this just incrementally. I'm not really taking advantage. It's just, timeless witness is a solid card and it's going to help you out. So,
all right, that does it for green. Let me real quick run us through each of the 2-color combos and what cards we put in there. So, starting with Azorius. Blue-white, obviously, we went with more tempo stuff to try to push that as a thing in this cube, but we also snuck Time Wipe in because we wanted the ability to have another Azorius control card. There's not many ways to sneak in board wipes into this cube, so we got to do it when we can. Into Dimir, we've got some wonderful ninja boys in Fallen Shinobi, who does not at all need a ninja deck. Even if you remove the ninja deck, you should try him alone. And Ingenious Infiltrator is a fun ninja card. We've also got Justin Parnell approved Dimir Keyrune.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Rakdos, we have some of the classics for playing your Aristocrats red-black aggro deck, which is Judith, Fireblade Artist, and we've got Murderous Redcap rounding it out because of the persist combo.
Yeah, I think Judith exemplifies what the black-red version of the Aristocrats is, where it's more aggressive.
Yeah. Gruul, we go all the way through mid-range to the top end of mid-range and getting into the ramp territory. Domri Anarchabolas, which is the new 3-drop Domri. He's a really good low-end mid-range dude who also could just be used in ramp.
Yeah, solid.
Escape to the Wilds, the Brad Called It card that people slept on way too long, which is a fantastic way to get value in your mid-range deck. And Rurik Thar as the classic 6-drop. He's really cheap and we need a 6-drop creature that can smash face.
Yeah, basically. Does that pretty well.
Selesnya, we've got Good Fortune Unicorn and Kitchen Finks, both for the combo, although Kitchen Finks is just an all-rounder. Everyone knows him.
Yeah.
And we've got a Johnny the Great-Hearted as a newer Planeswalker pickup.
Just a solid mid-range.
He's just solid mid-range Johnny. He's not super strong, but he'll get your playgroup used to playing with Planeswalkers in Cube and, value engines in general.
Yeah, and green-white, sometimes just having good mid-range is solid.
Yeah. Orzhov, we're again into our Aristocrats stuff, but also we just have Killian here because he's just a sweet value dude. Cruel Celebrant and Lingering Souls obviously being here for the general good stuff into your Aristocratsy decks, and Lingering Souls literally everywhere.
And it was like, Lingering Souls is just a good fucking card. So, yeah.
We have Saheeli, Sublime Artificer, Fire Ice, the classic, and Ral, Storm Conduit. So it's nice that we actually got 2 more Planeswalkers in this color pair, because I think the blue-red Planeswalker heavy control deck, maybe with a splash into a 3rd color, is a really solid archetype that you could try to force your way into doing that specifically instead of just playing blue-red spellsy control. They all work well with spells as part of the thing.
And just all 3 of these are generally very good spellsy deck cards. So,
but it works well while giving you an extra flair to the deck.
Yep.
Golgari is my secret shame.
Yeah.
Good Golgari cards cost $5.
These aren't bad. Maelstrom Pulse, I like Maelstrom Pulse.
It's fine.
Death Sprout is a bit iffy.
It's a bit iffy.
And Fine Finality is fine.
It's
just these aren't pushing you in any direction for Golgari. They're just Golgari cards. Whatever.
I'm not happy about where Golgari is in this cube.
No. And, yeah, it's just a problem with Golgari.
To do anything interesting in Golgari, you need a lot of money.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move into Boros. We went for the full aggro-y, tokeny thing with Figure of Destiny, Heroic Reinforcements. Shout out to the patrons who recommended it because, yeah, it's $0, and it's actually a relatively good game-ending 4-drop to cast in a token-heavy deck.
Oh, yeah. In a token deck, this is a sweet card. And rounding it out, Integrity Intervention, which is just solid.
General role player spell.
Yeah.
Simic, we've got Kiora Behemoth Beckoner for when you want to play that ramp deck. We've got Incubation and Congruity is a general good stuff. I always love this card, so we put it in Simic. And Sagu Mauler as your, you can play him in mid-range, you can play him in ramp, who cares? He beats the crap out of people.
As your classic fuck you control deck.
So real quick, going through what we've got in colorless. Just as a general overview, there is a couple low-end aggressive cards. There's a few hole fillers like Ornithopter of Paradise, because we don't get to run things like Bop in this cube.
Right. Interestingly, there are some Draft Matters cards like Deal Broker and Cogwork Librarian. Not everybody is all into that, but these are good examples of cards that fit into the cube to figure out if you want that style of drafting.
And I like putting them in as a core part of the cube for people to play with, just because I think it reminds people that cube is a game.
Yeah.
And you can increase the fun levels of cube, not just the power levels of cube.
And honestly, Deal Broker is not terrible. Like, putting it in your deck.
It's alright. I played it in a Rakdos deck or two.
Yeah.
Then we get into your classic, the higher end colorless cards with Scuttling Doom Engine and Mere Battlesphere as the cheapo game enders for your control decks of whatever variety or ramp.
Yeah.
We've got some equipments on the low end for putting into your aggro decks or your ninja decks even, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, tempo can work with some of these.
Lots of signets. The whole 10 set is here. We did include Sorcerer Spyglass. I don't think it's required. It's a generally decent card, and I'm happy to have it. And it's a tiny little safety valve for like planeswalkers and stuff.
It's nice to have answers to things in cubes, like just clean answers, and Spyglass answers planeswalkers pretty cleanly. So
it also answers the persist combo should you be super afraid of it.
Yeah.
So then we move into, again, there's just a lot more of the support for your aggro decks, vehicles, some more equipments, including one we're going to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
And Neverrennial's disc wrapping it all up just because, hey, we needed some board wipes. And it's a board wipe, I guess.
Sort of technically, yeah.
So in our land slots, we already mentioned there's 2 in each guild. When it comes to colorless, we have the following: Aether Hub, Ash Barrens, Evolving Wilds, Shimmering Veil, Terramorphic Expanse, and the 5 Thriving Lands. Those are all about the same tier of what they're doing for you. They're all basically an Evolving Wilds variant.
They're in that tier of how it fixes and stuff like that. So on the lands portion, there aren't that many aggro-based lands. There are some like Battlefield Forge, Aether Hub, that kind of stuff.
Yes, it is a weak point. Your aggro decks are going to not want to be splashing into colors they don't need.
Right, which is fine because I think aggro in this cube is generally very strong just because a lot of the aggro cards are cheap. So you can get the good ones that we play in non-budget restricted cubes.
Yeah, it wasn't an issue in testing, but it is something to take note of when you go to play it.
Yeah, which I think it's in a good spot of there are some lands for that deck, but you're not going to be looking at the 3-color aggro deck to be doing fantastic reliably, which is, I think that's a good point. And the fixing for the slower decks is just, it's really nice. It's quite nice.
All right, so before we wrap things up, there was a very good question last time that I answered in an email, and I remembered all these years later, which was, are there cards that are problematic that you think may ruin the balance of the cube as it stands and I may want to avoid in the first place? And I would say 50-50. There are cards I know are the snap pack 1 pick ones in this cube. I don't think any of them truly ruin the draft, for us at least, but here's the 5 that I would recommend keeping an eye on. Elspeth Sun's Nemesis.
Yeah.
Which is an incredibly strong mid-range walker for a cube of this power level.
Yeah, and it's just annoying to deal with because it has escape as well, so...
Yes. Control Magic, which is a very strong control magic effect.
Yeah.
Grafted War Gear as literally the best thing you can do in an aggro deck to equip to a creature.
Yeah, this is the standout one for me. Like, it's in the cube because it's still probably fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of winning decks are running Grafted War Gear.
Yeah. Aetherling, not because I think it's incredibly strong, but I think a lot of people dislike Aetherling when it wins.
Yeah, it can lead to
salty losses.
Yes.
And my last one would be Saheeli, because that card is so good, but I don't think it's broken. I just think it's very good.
Yeah, it's one of those that I think it'll be very good in this cube, but I don't think it would be broken because usually Saheeli scales pretty well with the power level of the cube. The more busted things you're able to do, the more Saheeli is able to take advantage of that. So I don't think it's going to be a problem, but it's still a very strong card. I do want to bring up, I think that the token deck in white might be slightly too strong, because the only real valve on it is the black, like, Cry of the Carnarium. I think it's fine because generally those type of decks don't feel bad when they're winning.
We have Pyroclasm in red as well. You also have Fiery Confluence and Arc Lightning. Like, there's a lot of ways for the more mid-rangey decks to put a stop to it, or the control decks to put a stop to it.
Yeah, so there are answers to it. I just feel like that the tokens deck is generally very easy to build during draft. So I think it's something to keep an eye out depending on your draft styles.
All right, that wraps up the discussion for the starter cube. If you're interested, I cannot recommend this enough. It is probably the best thing this show does for the community. I really hope people make use of this cube and share it with those who need it.
Also, remember, you can change it. Make it your own. Enjoy your cards. Add your pet cards. Have fun with it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take 90% of the cube and cut out the 10% you want to change. That's the point of it.
It's a good starting point. Have fun making it your own.
Build it up to 450 or 540 or 2,000. I don't care.
Yeah, you could do whatever you want. 2000's a bit extreme, but you can do whatever you want.
All right, Eric, let's get to our very special outro for the evening.
Sounds good.